Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by Joe Hobeck and Colleen Sharp, the editing team behind Apple TV Plus's Franklin. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us.
I guess my first question for you guys is what attracted you to this series and the scripts?
Um,
Um,
I've always been a fan of the Benjamin Franklin story and the character and his persona. And I was
Mhm.
curious, I was really curious to see Michael Douglas, how he would uh, fill that role, because we're not used to seeing him in period dramas. So, it was very interesting for me, proposition to see him um, take on this challenge.
How about yourself?
I would say, well, initially, I think when I first got pitched from my agent, I wanted to work with Tim Van Patten. That was the initial draw. Um, Also, I did before this, I worked on the Gilded Age, so I've been on a little bit of a early history run. Um, but I had a chance, or I thought I was hoping to have a chance to work with Tim back in 2015.
Mhm.
But that didn't happen because it was a show that went south, and he was going to come on and be our savior. But
Mhm.
so ever since then, I thought I'd like to work with Tim, and it was a great experience. I gotta say.
I do have to say, in terms of you know, how this show came together, when I first heard it pitched, or I guess announced, I was like, I don't know how that's gonna work. Because it seemed, it almost feels like a spin-off of the American Revolution or something. Uh,
Uh,
so it was very, very interesting how it came together. Did you guys end up reading the book that was used to inspire this? Or
I can't say I read it, cover to cover. I had it and I referenced it. My assistant Paul read it cover to cover. So, what about you, Joe? Did you read
I
it?
started reading it until, work set in, and then we
Yeah,
slowly ran out of time.
yeah, yeah. But I have to say, like, I don't know, maybe my public school education, but I wasn't that familiar with
Mhm.
this, part of history. And once I got into it, it was fascinating. I
Yeah.
mean, especially where we are today politically, like it feels like America might not be what it is if this all
Mhm.
hadn't happened. So
My friends and I would make little videos in our backyards, imitations of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. Eventually that need to tell stories became more of a technical interest and an interest in the art. To me, what's exciting is using cinema in its full potential, which is rhythm and sound design and music. Our job is to set up expectations and then deliver on them. I'm Brian Cates, and this is my course in film editing.
Because you guys both, you cut the pilot, and Joe, you cut the pilot, and if I'm not mistaken, Colleen, you cut the final episode.
yeah,
Uh,
we did odd and even episodes.
so what are like, because I know when I think about the pilot and the ending, those are sort of the two episodes that are some of the tougher ones, because the pilot, you're setting up things, you're trying to figure out the pacing, you're trying to figure out structure, or trying to figure out how's this going to look and feel. And then the final episode, you're sort of wrapping up and trying to bring everything together and make it sort of land.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, what were some of the things that you guys encountered or changed in those two episodes that, um, you know, uh, or I guess were altered to make the series work a bit better.
I think in the beginning, it was hard to, the first episode, the hardest thing is the setup, like introducing
Mhm.
all the characters, and there's so many characters in this, and all with French names. So it was trying to figure out like how to like these people's faces land, these
Mhm.
characters' names land. So we to get everyone acclimated at the same time, not to make it feel totally like expositional, like we're just like telling people the story. keeping it visual. So, I think sometimes like just to make characters' names land, we would like put their names off screen if it wasn't already in the script or spoken, dialogue. We would try to sneak in as many times we would say the characters' names and associate them with their faces to set up those characters in the opening episode. So we really kind of try to remember these names. And another thing, in the very beginning, there was a whole scene that was sort of lifted because the story felt like it really started once Franklin and Temple got to Paris. And there was a whole scene that was, I think, from an earlier draft that took place like in the fishing village on the coast of France that we sort of like, we tried to, it wasn't a bad scene. We tried to keep it in, but we just ultimately realized that, through like a voiceover bridge, we wanted to keep the story rolling and get to Paris as soon as we can. So I think, the typical like first episode challenges of setting up the characters, trying to not feel like expositional, keeping it visual while, sort of giving all this information for the audience to absorb.
How about yourself for wrapping it up, Colleen?
I think that I had it a little easier than Joe because it was all, the wrap up was sort of baked into the scripts, and we just sort of, went around, checked in with all of our main characters. There was one point when the actress Odette and Beaumarchais, the theater director, they weren't a part of that wrap up, and we wanted to include that. So, I had to sort of steal pieces from, I think I took a shot of Odette from one of Joe's episodes, and
Yeah, we found an angle that I didn't use to sort of cheat into.
Yeah, and then we like colored it so that her dress is she's wearing a different colored dress than in Joe's scene. So that was the only thing, and that came together pretty easily. I think that in the final episode there's a lot of white men in a room talking, and with various scenes where they're trying to wrap up this negotiation of the treaty. So I was a little worried, like, is this all going to feel repetitive scenes? But I feel like Tim did a great job of just, setting them up differently. And obviously the conversations were different, so that didn't prove to be a problem. So that was all pretty.
Do you guys both speak French, or was that?
No, no. And Joe, you don't really speak French either, right? No. We had this great apprentice who's French speaking, Max, and all of our dailies they would come in, they'd be prepped by our assistants, and then they would go to Max, and he would put on subtitles on everything, on every shot. So there was a little delay, that created another day or two delay, but that all worked out. And it was really actually pretty easy because it's, Joe, you have experience, I know, with working in a show with, Asian dialogue, but with French, we're all sort of a little bit familiar, even if you don't speak it, it's a little familiar, and with the cadence, you can really kind of tell where you're at. And we had, dual language scripts, so you can follow along.
And those French actors, they never missed a line.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they missed anything. A lot of times you're trying to build, things that sound more fluent, or, things that, some of the actors stumble on lines or words. And we try to fix that, fix the cadence. But honestly, like those French actors were all amazing, all of their lines very well. So
yeah,
it wasn't like we had to fix anything in that way. So they made it very, very easy. And the only reason we knew that it was, what do you call it? It was okay is because every take was the same, right? Like, so like I would listen to one take, and then the next take would be identical, and next take would be identical. So I knew that there was no mistakes being made. And then you sort of get an ear for the different cadences, even though you don't know what they're saying. Since it's all subtitled, all the dialogue is subtitled, we read it as we're hearing it. So the cadence becomes ingrained in our brains as we're watching all the repeat takes.
Well, my question is, how do you assess the performance if you're not speaking? You know how like we're watching someone who's speaking English, you can sort of figure out through tone and what have you. But okay, it doesn't feel authentic or real. But if we're watching someone in another language, do you find it difficult to address what the performance is like?
Weirdly, no. Like weirdly, like once
I
you
know.
associate it with once you associate with the words on the screen, like the subtitles, and you hear it over and over again, you can kind of tell when um I think we're also blessed with really well prepared actors.
Mm-hmm.
They were all amazing. It was incredible. They were really so professional and so good. And I agree. It was sort of, you can still you can tell when someone's stumbling or struggling or something as an
Mm-hmm.
actor. And it was pretty. I can't really explain why it was like so easy to do, but it was, the translation helped and stuff, all, but you could tell when they'd nailed it.
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges in the series that you guys faced in terms of editing?
I think some of it was just being on location. So like a lot of it was shot in France on location. And just certain location problems like wind and and hair being well, I mean, I had a scene in the park, which is the hardest one to edit for me because every take, the hair was blown in a different direction. Just
Right.
because of the location shooting and also sound and things of that nature, I think was challenging.
Mhm.
But of course, it offered such authenticity to
Yeah.
the production. That was amazing. So
Did you guys get to go to France and set up
We
there, or
did.
was the footage just sent back?
No, it was just sent back. And it all, one of the things was unusual about this was that because Tim Van Patten was directing all 8 episodes, so he sort of he let it be known in the beginning, like, don't send me cuts. We didn't send any cuts to him. He wasn't. It's like, I'm not going to be, I'm going to be overwhelmed doing this. I'm not going to look at cuts. And I think because he is such a pro and was so confident about what he was getting. But it was at first, it was a little strange for me not to be having that ongoing dialogue with the director where you're getting feedback and for 6 months, we really didn't have much communication with him at all.
Oh, interesting.
yeah, it was like it was a big leap of faith. I mean, it was shot like
Yeah.
a feature, an 8-hour feature in a way, in that there was one director for all 8 episodes,
And they were
and
cross-porting and everything.
we didn't get any feedback or to work on any cuts until everything was shot and everything was at least edited for editor's cut. So I made it
As an
interesting.
8-hour film, did you ever sit down and watch the whole thing as a group to see where things were working, or did you, because it was so, because most editors I talk to, the schedules don't allow for that type of thing.
I don't think we watched it all together.
We watched we had runs where we watched like the first 3 and then and like that, and then
Yeah.
4, 5, and 6, and then the last 2, I
Yeah.
think, is how we broke it up. But so we could kind
when
of.
when Michael Douglas came to town, we did those.
Yeah, right.
We found time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. He gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now.
Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
I'm wondering how you guys like to work with sound, because some of the editors I talk to, they pass it off to their assistants because they don't like to touch it. Others like dive in and try to build it as authentically as possible. And in this case, you're working with stuff that's, your environments and what have you that are, hundreds of years old, or, sounds that are hundreds of years old. So I'm wondering how you guys built the sound in this for the sound team, or how you like to approach sound in this.
Um,
Did we get any temp backgrounds from Rui? Do you remember? I don't know if we did.
Not that much, really. We got maybe like a few specific things, but I would say, for me, I really I don't feel like that's my strong suit. And so I've let my assistant, Paul Penster, do it. And we had just come off of, we would talk about the scene and I'd say, we need this or that, or, but he knows what he's doing in that realm too. So And because we had just come off of Gilded Age, you know, he had a lot of old carriages and things like that in his back pocket. So he was well equipped for the period sounds. And you know,
Yeah.
and then he would do a pass and we'd screen it and I'd give some feedback. But really, I kind of let him do most of it.
Yeah, and also my assistant Charlie and I, we were coming off of the show Serpent Queen.
Mhm.
Right.
So it was, you know, it was a similar idea in that it was a period drama. And in fact, they also shot that in France, that show. So, and it was also a lot of the same production crew.
No, okay.
So, so yes, we had a lot of built-in, you know, sound effect library from it. Wouldn't, I mean, that's a much older show, and that's Renaissance era, but you know, still have carriages, still have horses,
Right.
still have French-speaking people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was one of the challenges, was finding like Walla, some good
Yeah,
French
exactly.
background Walla, you know, for
Yeah.
the period.
But
Sorry.
I don't say our French apprentice who did all the subtitling also added a lot of our temp ADR as well.
Yes, that's right. We got him to do a lot of different background voices.
Did any of it end up in the final cut? Do you know? Because I know there's been certain people I've talked to. Oh yeah, that ended up in the final cut or in the final
I think
delivery.
no, but definitely not. But when we needed a female voice, he would coach, I think, Charlie at times to say it phonetically.
Yeah.
Friends, we'd have certain female voices. My assistant.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was kind of a fun part of the process.
Is there a particular scene that was sort of difficult to come together, but that you're really proud of the outcomes?
My two most difficult scenes was there was one in the park, sort of the picnic, with Franklin, and my second scene was in the big opera house scene when he sort of gets embarrassed, and it just like was a there's a lot of different shots and a lot of different angles, and just trying to keep the scope in there as well as the personal drama that was unfolding was a challenge, but I think both those scenes came out really well.
How about yourself, Colleen?
There was one scene that was also in the opera house, and where it was just sort of the emotion of, it was with Michael Douglas and Madame Brion, and they're trying to she's basically reacting to what's happening on stage, but and gets very emotional, and just kind of getting the timing right, because the audience is laughing, but she starts crying, and just sort of that kind of threading the needle on that emotion. There probably the visual effect wise, the hardest scene was this one scene in episode 6 with the stag hunt. And because there was tons of second unit footage, but no stag. And so it was like trying to, but actually my assistant did most. I let him cut that scene because there was so much footage to go through the second unit. Just they shot the hell out of that. And so it was just a massive amount of footage.
Well, I have one last question for you guys. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Joe, have you got one?
I just finished watching the first season of the OC.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Remember that show from the early 2000s?
Yeah.
So I think my daughters were into it. So I sort of like, it was sort of funny.
Yeah, same thing.
It was entertaining.
Yeah.
It was different than anything I've ever worked on. Also, my mentor, Norman Buckley. You know Norman Buckley?
Yeah.
Editor turned director. He got his directing start on that show. So he started as the editor. He cut the pilot, and I always liked his work. And even in that show, where it's slightly melodramatic and corny, I thought that it was the editing was well crafted, especially these episodes. So. So that was fun to watch. And he also he sort of got his directing start on that show. So
how about yourself, Colleen?
I also blame my daughter. She couldn't watch Hulu at her apartment for some reason, and so she came over to my place and was watching The Bachelor, which I think of the 139 seasons of that show, whatever many there are, I have never managed to never watch any of that. But I found myself getting into the last half of this one season, and I actually cared who Joey married.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm going to become a member of Bachelor Nation. But it was, entertaining, and they got it down, because I think there really are like 35 seasons or something. So
Wow.
It's not going anywhere, that show.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
probably not.
It's still getting the ratings. It'll be around
Yep.
for a while.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Mhm.
That's it for our show this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, or of course on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.